right, everybody. Welcome to another weekly webinar here at Route Consultant. For those of you who are here for the first time, or for those of you who've been here every week and are back again, my name's Josh Gregory. I am the Vice President of Education here at Route Consultant. So if you've never heard of us at all, our team ran hundreds of routes across the country in both the pickup and delivery and the line haul space for FedEx. And today, really what we're focused on is helping new buyers that are looking to get into the space for the first time understand what the opportunity is, what the challenges are, and help find the right one. And then for all of those who are already in the space, we want this to always continue to be a place where we can come together, learn, ask questions, and provide some insight on the different things that are affecting everyone in the industry today and how everyone can learn from each other, get better, and hopefully run a little bit more profitably, a little bit more efficiently. Before I go too much farther, I do have a quick disclaimer that I have to read, as I do every week. So Route Consultant is not endorsed by and is not recommended by Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, is not associated with, and has no connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Now, all that to say, we do want to make sure that today is a place where you continue to learn and find new things. So as I'm talking today, as I'm going through some content, feel free to go ahead and type questions. If you have questions about what I'm talking about or anything on the space as a whole, you don't have to wait till the end to type them in. You can type them in at any point. And if you do have those questions, there's a little Q&A button at the bottom of the window. That's the best place to type them in and submit them. If you want me to see them, you can put it in the chat. You can raise your hand, but I'm probably going to miss it. So if you really want me to answer the question, make sure to put it in the Q&A. And then at the end of the content, once I've gone through that and some new events coming up, I will go through any and all questions anyone has for as long as I have time for. And like I said, it can be questions about what I'm covering and focusing on today, or it can be anything you have on the space as a whole, FedEx, logistics, whatever you've got questions on. Now, for today, in the FedEx industry, we often say that it comes down to properly managing two things: your people and your trucks. Now, for most businesses, for most of you who are here or will be in this space, especially if you're coming in as a new investor, your most important person is going to be your manager. And you'll often hear us talking about managers and referring to them as BCs, or business contacts. And I think really everyone understands and knows that your BC is critical to the success of your daily operations. But at the same time, I see so many contractors getting this relationship wrong. And really a strained relationship between an owner and their BC is one of the most common ways that I see these operations struggling or even falling apart. Now, if you don't build that trust and relationship properly, it can end up feeling like a me versus them structure, where you're handing down demands and rules that a BC may think are wrong. And instead of talking with you about it, they undercut your decisions, or they give excuses that don't have any real merit, but maybe because you don't know enough about the space yet, or you haven't seen exactly what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, you don't really know enough to push back to know if that's a valid excuse or not. In the current FedEx environment, FedEx is doing a lot. They're providing or pushing a lot of different KPIs and dashboards and programs that you're trying to optimize. So really, you just got to make sure that in all the FedEx stuff, you want to minimize all of the friction that you can, that your own team is creating. You want to get rid of all of that so that you can all row in the same direction and keep hitting these objectives that FedEx is setting out. So today I'm going to go over some important strategies and thought processes that you should kind of, evaluate and think through to understand and improve this relationship in your own business, and then give some advice for talking to BCs around some of these new metrics and new FedEx programs. So the first thing to understand is that when you're starting this, your goal is to create a common ground of discussion. You are most likely coming from very different perspectives and different worlds. Whether you've been in the space for a long time or you're entering right now, the vast majority of people that we see in the space came into this as some kind of entrepreneur. Maybe this is the first logistics business you've run, but you may have corporate background in a different industry. Maybe you're coming out of retirement, whatever it is. You typically don't have the same background as these BCs, which often started as a driver or even a package handler with FedEx, and then got to the place they are because they were really good at that job. They ran efficiently, did so successfully, and now they're a manager of one of these teams. So the way that you think, the way that you talk, the way that you act, and lots of other things can be wildly different between the two of you and can be interpreted very differently. So let's just go through a couple of those to understand and start to evaluate in yourself and your business as you're thinking through this conversation. And the first part is just thinking through what is good, what's success, what looks good to the two of you. As an owner, an AO, if you hear me say AO, I'm talking about owner, it's authorized officer in FedEx vernacular. But you care about your profit, your bottom line, the efficiency of the business, and really making sure that, sure, you're hitting FedEx metrics, but at the end of the day, you want to make money because this is a business that you're running. This is how you make your money, and you want to make sure that you can continue to run this business and need money to do so. And oftentimes it can feel like no news is good news because there's nothing wrong, there's nothing broken, but sometimes that can get you into trouble because you can get lulled into a false sense of security there where maybe your BC just isn't telling you any of the problems because they don't want to. They're worried that you're going to get angry or mess things up. And so, that profit and efficiency, one can, kind of be at odds with what a BC expects, but also you've got to remember that there's a certain amount of inspection you need to do on a continual basis. Now, a BC, they really typically want as low stress of a day as possible. In a perfect world, they've got extra drivers, they have extra resources, so that they can minimize any kind of service failure or any kind of conflict with FedEx. And obviously, that is not the most profitable way to run a business of having, double the number of drivers that you need and running 15 routes when you only need to do 10, just because then you won't have any service issues and all of your drivers are really happy because they ran for 3 hours that day. So the BC doesn't have any people problems to deal with because all those drivers got paid well and they were only on the road for 3 hours and they were home by 2. That's a great day for a BC, but it's not a great day for you. And so there has to be a balance and some understanding there. You're also going to find that those BCs are typically salaried. It's one of the big perks of being a BC is that you can have a very expected paycheck. And so what you may have to do is find incentive structures or bonuses to push them to correct or improve certain key areas that if they had a choice, they wouldn't necessarily push on because it makes them uncomfortable or it makes the day more stressful if they have to do those things. So part of this, and what I'm going to talk about next, is that you guys have to kind of come to the same understanding and be on the same page and use the same language. Otherwise, you might both think that everything's good and you're losing money, or you have problems that you haven't even addressed. And a critical point as you're thinking through this, as you're thinking through these conversations and talking about how you have different perspectives, is that everything that you say may not be what is heard. You really need to think through this point of view of the BC and start to craft communication that they will hear and that they will understand and will hit them on their terms and really talk to the things that they care about. Another crucial thing, as early as you can, if you haven't done it already in your contractor, is that you really need to understand what your BC does on a day-to-day basis. I've talked with plenty of AOs that felt like their BCs don't do anything other than just dispatch or just DRO. But a good BC should be doing all of that, but also they should be putting out all kinds of fires and small problems throughout the day that you don't hear about because they've handled already. And there may be days where they don't do a lot, but that's because you've kind of set up a well-run operation, or they have. But it's why I really encourage new owners and really any owners to spend time in their business to really understand what a BC does every day and what they're doing, what tasks they have and are accomplishing, because not all BCs are created equally. And so you need to get a firm grasp of their skills and their gaps as quickly as possible so you can address them. So minimizing challenges, a couple of these other things that I tell you to do early. You really want to clearly communicate your expectations in person and in something like an employee handbook. Can't stress enough how important those are for both drivers and your BCs, but it just helps to be another written place that they can reference to see the things that you said. Now, when you're communicating these expectations, it's also important to give the BC room to ask questions. Allow some back and forth so that they can really make sure they understand in their terms what you're asking for. Don't just say, here's the rules, talk to me, 6 weeks from now, and we'll see if you did them or not. Make it a conversation. But at the end of that conversation, you need to make sure, again, reemphasize that at the end of the day, this is what you expect of them, and this is how you'll be tracking that on a regular basis to see if they're hitting those metrics. I would also highly encourage check-in calls. And if you schedule these check-in calls, make sure that you go to them. Don't just cancel these. Make sure they're a priority. You're busy, they're busy, but you have to make time for these conversations. You're both building rapport and you're providing a place for them to bring up challenges so that you can address them together. A last really important thing here is go in and watch them do DRO at night, and not just one night, multiple nights. You need to learn what they do, why they're making route decisions, and talk through why they're making those decisions. I can't tell you how many people I talk to who, they have some kind of DRO issue or challenge. And the first thing I say is, how experienced are you with DRO? How much you know what's going on? And they say, not zero out of 10. My manager does it all. I don't know the problems. That is going to be a friction point for you no matter what. You don't have to be the end all be all expert of DRO, but if you don't know what's happening in that system, if you don't understand why decisions are being made, there's not much at all that you can do for your own business. There's not much you can do to improve your business other than asking the BC to do it. And if you tell the BC, hey, I need 9 routes instead of 10, they may say, that's impossible. And with your knowledge of DRO, that might be the end of that conversation because you cannot address that. You can't fight that. You might just have to say, yeah, okay, well, I have to trust you. And that's not the place where you want to be, because oftentimes, like I said and mentioned before, it may just be that for them, removing a route is hard. It requires extra scheduling. It requires them to push a driver that they don't feel like having that conversation with, but can be done. But they just have to understand that this is something that isn't a negotiable. And there's a bunch of different reasons why we'll get to why that is even more important now than it has been previously. So if there's nothing else that you've done, make sure you go in and check on DRO and how they're doing it right now. Because you need to have set across your whole business a clear goal, assess where their skills and challenges are and how possible it'll be for them to achieve those goals. And then it's not at that point stepping away. You have to show them that you're willing to work beside them, to support them, to stay in communication with them, to make sure that the business is as healthy as possible. Because you want them to feel, like I said, supported, but also that this is something where they really have some pride in you and the business that they're working towards, not just as a job. Because as much as you can get them to understand and think that way, the better off you'll be. Because for you, it's not just a job. This is a business that you own and you need to hit certain metrics. So having that conversation, setting those clear standards are crucial. And this is the mindset that you need to have to be successful. But I want to kind of take all of that and come back and use it as kind of a reference point for a couple of current key FedEx initiatives that you have to make sure your BC understands. And they don't have to know every single detail of every single one of these programs and initiatives, but there are key parts of each of these that a BC has to know to be able to keep FedEx happy and keep your business safe. So I'll go through a couple of these. The first one is metals. The metals program, just a really quick refresher if you haven't heard of it. There are 3 categories now that all contractors are sorted into: bronze, silver, and gold. Gold is a really small group of contractors that are performing extremely well. They're essentially overachieving on all of FedEx's standards. The trick here, the thing to really be aware of though, when it comes to gold contractors, is that hitting that perfect standard often means you're sacrificing margins. You're running too lean, and that can lead to a lot of challenges. Maybe it's on the safety side, maybe it's burnout for your drivers. And so it's not always going to be your best operational strategy to be gold. So take that into account already when you're starting to think through this. Now, the advantages of gold are that you may be considered for more growth and more contingency opportunities, but that's currently a pretty fuzzy benefit that they haven't strictly defined. There's no, contractual strict promise there. So really, when you're thinking about gold, if you're thinking I'm going to hit these perfect standards, you need to be really careful and understand what kind of impact that has on your business. Now, most people will be in the silver category. It's where most people are going to just aim to stay. Like I said, you can be trending towards gold or headed towards gold, but it may not be worth that cost to go all the way. And even if you get gold, it's really hard to stay there. So, and there's no real benefit or negative to being in silver. It's where most contractors are. It's kind of I am in the tier where I'm doing what I'm supposed to. Now, the last category is bronze. And if you've ended up in the bronze category, and especially if you end up there in the last 90 days of your contract, FedEx is essentially going to view you as a risk, and you may not be offered the opportunity to renegotiate your contract. So bronze is bad. You do not want to be bronze. And if you're headed towards bronze, it's really important to start taking steps to improve that as soon as possible. Now, if you aren't aware, metals is both P&D and line haul now. They're just calculated and weighted differently. So for P&D, it's in order in terms of most important is safety first. So how safe your operations are, your compliance with FedEx standards, prevention of accidents. Next is service, which is just how successful you are at your pickups and deliveries. And then customer experience. So that's essentially your ability to meet your customers' expectations. And the main thing you'll get into is the RIDE program, the rate your delivery experience, which I will not go into now, but there are some flaws. And the last category is productivity. And so that's just based on how many resources that FedEx thinks it'll take you to deliver your territory versus what you are actually doing. So safety, service, customer experience, productivity. That's what it is for P&D. Line haul, it's just 3 categories. So safety first, very similar, and safety is always going to be the most important for FedEx. So P&D or line haul, safety first. But the next one for line haul is availability. So basically the percentage of all of the runs that you're offered that you accept versus the ones that you decline because you can't take it for staffing or any other reasons, a truck's down. You can decline a certain number of your runs in a year from a contractual standpoint, but the more runs you decline, the more it'll hit your metal score now. And then the last one's service, which is the total monthly percentage of runs that arrive on time. So service and line haul is if you've taken a run, you have to make sure that you get it in there within the right time window that they've set out. So with all of these, it's going to be really important for both the health of your business and the future opportunities that you inherit. Now, when it comes to your BC with these, it's really important to explain to them how the metals program works. It's important to have them understand where you are today and where you're trending and what those focus areas are that FedEx has given you. And those focus areas are going to be things that FedEx is basically saying, here, these are the things to work on to improve your metal status. And you want to work with your BC to target those areas for improvement. And it may even be worth giving them a financial incentive to improve those, depending on how severe of a problem that is. If you keep your metal status and focus area secret from your manager, so maybe you're in bronze or you're silver trending bronze and you're worried, you don't want to tell them, you don't want to get them worried, and then you just start pushing out changes and efficiencies, they're not going to understand it. They're going to be annoyed that you're doing this without giving them any rationale for it. And they may not even support those changes. Like I said, if you're doing a bunch of stuff that's really going to stress them out and they don't have a good understanding as to why, they may just think that you're trying to make more money without giving a clear reason for it. Now, on the flip side, you can be transparent and have some of these conversations about your status and show, look, these are the standards that FedEx has set and that they need us to hit. So let's push the team and be strategic in DRO. Let's hit these standards. And you can kind of even play FedEx as the bad guy of saying, look, I am aware that these efficiency standards are kind of crazy. We don't have to hit them perfectly, but we have to at least hit this much. So let's work together to hit those and get you, and then it helps get you and your BC moving in the same direction. So metals aren't going away. If anything, they're just going to keep on tweaking those, and that's going to be a part of life with FedEx now. But what you need to be thinking through is that it's going to show it's showing trending data, and if there are problems, that is the opportunity to work with your BC and to help kind of enable them to fix those problems for you if it's not something that you have direct impact on, especially. Next one to be thinking about is Schedule L. So for those of you who aren't aware, Schedule L is a part of the ISP agreement that was added back in 2022, and it was added to improve safety in the FedEx network. That's the explicit reason for it, and minimize the amount that FedEx is paying in insurance claims. So importantly, what this program does is look back over the last 36 months and sorts you into a tier based on the number of occurrences you've had, where an occurrence is just any incident that results in losses, liabilities, or payments by FedEx. Importantly, this can happen. This can be an accident, a general liability, it can be preventable, non-preventable. There's, it's pretty wide ranging what can count as an occurrence, and it includes both vehicular and non-vehicular incidents. And importantly, too, all occurrences count equally, regardless of the dollar amount. They're all counted equally. That's how FedEx has decided to count it. Frequency is what they're caring about, not necessarily the exact dollar amount. And if you're in the top half of the tiers that they sort you in, you get a safety bonus every quarter. If you're in the bottom half, then you're paying a chargeback that is basically split out weekly for that quarter, and you're having to pay a percentage of your revenue for being in the low safety tiers. Now, you don't have to go into every detail. You don't have to tell a BC that, hey, I'm in tier 4, so I'm paying a certain percentage of revenue, so you have to fix it. Like, they don't have to go that deep, but it is super important just to continue to emphasize to them how important safety is, more so than ever. And new drivers can't just be somebody that you kind of allow to learn slowly and you don't worry as much, because an accident from a new driver, even if it's a small accident, can live on your record for 3 years. So when BCs are bringing new drivers on and onboarding them, really critical that they are paying close attention to them over those first couple of weeks. Reviewing better, reviewing all of their habits, probably doing a drive along at some point through that experience to catch any bad habit that's there before it has the time to solidify and lead to some kind of occurrence. Because like I said, it may have just been a small cost before, but now with Schedule L, it's going to be something that sits on your record as an occurrence for years. So the main thing when it comes to BCs on that side of things is just pushing safety more than ever before. It comes back to metals too. Safety is still a part of metals. So it's not something that should have ever dropped off a BC's radar. But now with how important Schedule L affects your bottom line, it really needs to be something you continue to emphasize with your BCs. Now, the last one is Express. And we're talking about the integration of Express and Ground and the impact it has on the delivery network. And many of you may not have Express volume yet. It's rolled out in a bunch of different places across the country, but not everywhere. And it's going to continue to happen over time where you'll get Express volume in your terminal. And like I said, this is again something where they don't have to be experts on everything to do with Express. And you may be thinking about the future of Express, how it affects all numbers of things across the FedEx network over time. That's not what they need to worry about. The most important thing for now is to focus on how important time definite deliveries are. Now, these are the Express deliveries that require a package to be delivered at 10:30 or one of those other time slots throughout the day. Service is calculated separately for your FedEx Express packages, and FedEx will monitor those numbers very closely. The thing that you need to coach your BCs on is that the current mindset, with FedEx at least, is that they would rather you fail or be late on your ground deliveries than miss an Express time definite delivery. So if you have to prioritize and choose between the two, they need to make sure that as long as it's not a huge detriment to the rest of your business and it's kind of all things equal, Express time sensitive deliveries need to arrive on time. And that's where some prioritization needs to be. It is currently where FedEx will come down on you the hardest if you have struggles, is if you're missing those, because there's a lot of fees and costs to FedEx if there is a FedEx Express package that was supposed to be there at 10:30 and arrives at 11. There are big costs to them, to their network. So that's why they're coming down so hard on that right now. But just know that that's going to be one of your critical things that a BC needs to take as their puzzle piece as they're structuring a day, handling a problem. If there's a delayed delivery and they're trying to find the best way to do it, they may have to have a little bit of a hit on efficiency and run a different route to get that time sensitive delivery on time, or else you're going to hear from your terminal manager very soon. So that's kind of the main piece when it comes to Express right now. Like I said, a BC doesn't need to be thinking about the huge implications or what Express means over the next 3 years. They need the tactical tools to handle what is in front of them today and what you need their expectations to be so that they can achieve the best thing for the business. It's where, again, too, you need to make sure that you understand DRO and you can go through this with your BC so that whether it's the night before or if something happens during the day, that they can make the right strategic decision and that you understand it and have communicated all of that to them. So the relationship between you as the owner and the BC is not always an easy one, but it's definitely an important one. It always will be. So you have to build the right foundation and employ those strategies I talked about earlier to make sure that you're establishing really clear and effective lines of communication. And from there, it's just important to keep handling every new initiative that FedEx releases and work with your BC to find that right path forward. Now, some of you may have heard this and thought that this is your current relationship with the BC will not allow for that. It's gotten to a bad spot, or you just know that what their skill sets are, and you just don't think it's something they're even capable of making these kinds of decisions and helping out in that way. We do have a way that, we have our BC training program. If you haven't seen it, the explicit reason we created it is because we want there to be a way for an AO and a BC to sit in the same room, take a course together, and then at the end of it, have a common language and foundation for the rest of your working relationship. So that is a digital course that we built out that you'll be able to go through online at your own pace with your BC and have calls at the end to kind of go through it with our team to talk about your challenges and the things that you've learned or the things that you may want to ask more questions on. And if you have any questions on that, happy to send the details on it. But other than that, right now, that's the main things that I wanted to cover for today. So I'll open it up for any questions anyone has. And in the meantime, I'm going to go over new listings and some events coming up. So you've got some time to type anything in if you want to. Now, we have 2 new listings this week. The first is out of Rhode Island. This is 7 P&D routes at 1.4 million. Pretty high margin here, up at approaching 28%. It's got a manager and 14 trucks, and it's a very wealthy protected territory up there. So if you're in that area, let us know and ask it, and we can send you all the details. Last one is on the complete opposite side of the country. So up in northwestern Oregon, we have 11 P&D routes at 875,000. A manager, 11 trucks, really low mileage operation, and mainly new vehicles as well. So again, whether you're up in the Northeast in Rhode Island or all the way in the Pacific Northwest with Oregon, we've got those 2 options for you this week. Now, coming up, there's a couple of important events. One, if you are at all in the Baltimore region, DC, that neck of the woods, we will be there for a happy hour on June 4th. So completely free to attend. Free food, free drinks. You can meet our team, ask questions, but also meet vendors, meet other contractors in your area, meet other investors, everybody in that area. Like I said, completely free to attend. Just I'd ask you to go and register so that we know how many to expect. And again, that is June 4th. We also have a full list of more happy hours this year. So we've got that on our website if you're looking for it, and you can see the full calendar for the rest of the year. If you're a new investor and still trying to figure out if this is the right space for you or not, we do have new investor summits that we host throughout the year. And these are designed as really a way for you to, in a crash course, decide if this is, 1, the right space for you, and 2, if P&D or line haul is the right fit for you in the FedEx space. It's a combination of a digital course that you'll have access to as soon as you sign up, and then in-person summit workshops, which the next one of those is actually next Friday. And so if you're interested in that, we do still have room, but it's very limited on who can come for next week. So I would ask that you sign up on that sooner rather than later, because we're close to capacity on that one. So May 24th, next Friday, is our next summit. And the last one I always like to remind on is we have our big contractor expo coming up in the first week of August. Now, if you've never been to one of these, this is a time of the year where we bring every vendor from this space, every vendor we can get a hold of, hundreds of vendors, trucks, contractors from across the country, thousands of contractors from everywhere in the country into one place to see a ton of content, learn about the things that are affecting the space today, things that we are expecting to affect the space tomorrow, that you can learn from, be prepared for, and take some tactical tools to improve your business today and tomorrow. And beyond that, we got unlimited food and drinks, and we got a lot of fun times. If you've been to these, it's a full event and it is free. The only thing you got to make sure you do is reserve your hotel room. And this is in Dallas, Texas in the first week of August. So those hotel rooms are not unlimited. They will sell out. So if you're trying to book those, you can register for the event for free. Just make sure that you book your hotel room in advance. So other than that, I did see a quick question come in. So they are evaluating a line haul deal and asking kind of what's the rule of thumb on truck expenses. And it seems like it cuts into a significant portion of profit margins. The rule of thumb there is that it will vary. So in line haul, it's going to be a function of the mileage. Generally, the nice thing about line haul is that you can track revenue and most expenses at a mileage rate. Where this can vary a lot is the age of those vehicles. So if you have really old vehicles with really high mileage, your expenses are going to be a lot higher. Also, if you have leases, that line item may look a lot higher as well. Those full service leases cover all your repair and maintenance, and it turns your future CapEx into a trackable expense or an operating expense that happens every month instead of something you have to plan for in the future. The challenge is that it's when you're looking at it from a P&L perspective, is it's above the line. So it's going to show up there and it will hit your NOI at the end of the year. So it's just important to kind of think through that side of things. It's really going to depend on what your fleet looks like, what your mileage looks like, and what kind of current fleet strategy you have. Happy to look at any of it, look at the exact trucks and kind of give you our advice on if it looks good or not. Feel free to reach out to our team. We do hundreds of these every year where we evaluate these opportunities and give advice on if it's worth pursuing, if it's the right price, recommendations there. But it's going to be all come down to a mileage range, the age of the fleet, and the type of fleet composition is really going to dictate what your costs are going to be. So it is an expense. It shouldn't be your biggest expense, but it is something that does cut into the margin. As to how well they've run the fleet is really going to affect how much it cuts into your margin. But like I said, the only good way to give you an answer on that is to really look at the business and the fleet, and we can give you really concrete answers there. Other than that, I'm not seeing any other questions come in, so I will go ahead and end it today. So everyone, thank you so much for being here, kind of being here for this conversation, asking your questions. We will be here every week. So if you have questions or looking for that next topic, we'll be here at the same time next week. Other than that, thank you all for being here, and we will all see you next week.